Welcome to Livingston County, New York's Records Management mini webinar series, Now You Know. In this module, we'll be talking about file naming, the art and the science. In other words, I'm going to give you some reasons why. So, what kind of files am I talking about, and why should I worry about this? Well, I'm talking about electronic records. So, anything that you're creating digitally and saving on your local drive or on a cloud service or Laserfiche or the ERP, really anywhere. Things that you might attach to an email, things that could be part of a larger data set. So, like later a scientist could come back and look at that information from, like, say, a series of applications and generate some information for better decision making. So we want to make sure that we're focusing carefully on file naming for those kinds of things. But why? Well, the main reason is that we're required to by law. It's in our favorite arts and cultural affairs laws regarding records management. But there are other reasons that are even more enticing for us working in an office setting. So every electronic record happens to be a data packet, and it contains information, and some of that information needs to be regulated or managed a certain way, like maybe it has personal identifying information in it, or potentially it could be something that could be used by one department for one purpose and in another department for something else entirely. Either way, though, we can't allow these electronic records to just float around in space when they can be moved, shared, or lost in the clutter. Good file names make it easier to do the work you need to do, and it makes it easier for your person that comes after you or the people that are working with you to do the work they need to do. So let's make it happen. To make it easier to see why, I've created these random files that are not real, but I want to show you this issue in a matter of context. So basically, imagine that Linda works in your office and Linda saves things in her file, in her folders on her computer or on the local area network drive. And she calls them things like contract and invoice 24, but she knows exactly what they mean, right? Because she worked with them yesterday. But suppose somebody else in the same office is saving things in a folder called fiscal, and they're giving them these file names that are a little bit more descriptive. It's like we can see right off the bat that this particular document is dated a certain time or date, it relates to a certain subject, and it's a certain kind of business process. So let's look at these out of context, like I often get to in records management. Those of us working in records management or IT or data governance, or maybe we're data analysts and it's inside an agency, may see things differently. We might see it like this. So the contracts from Linda's file and the invoices from Linda's file and the other ones from those fiscal files are all together now because I look at things based on their retention period and their business process. And I need to know the date more than anything else. So now you can see that if I had a whole list of 25 contracts and they're from all different years or dates, contract.pdf would be very unhelpful to me. You can also see that under invoices, I can't really tell what 24 is. Is that a company? Is it a date? I have no idea. So invoice24.docs is really not an appropriate file name in this context because I don't know anything about it, and I'm going to have to look into that file quite a bit to determine how long it has to stay. Imagine too that it's your files that you're looking at, and you now have to determine what of all of the documents that you have saved, which are invoices, should be destroyed. Imagine if every file in those invoices folder were labeled by the date and then the company and then invoice. The invoice part maybe wouldn't be so important to you because invoices are typically together, but maybe it would be if they were all stored together under a project file. In any case, if they're all in order by their date, it's really easy to tell which ones are 6 years or older, so then you know which ones you can delete. Here's another clear example of why it's so important to give things good file names. Suppose I'm searching for staple goods. This is, of course, the company that we saw the contract for and invoices for from the previous slides. But When I look in all of the folders, in all of the files that I may have on my local area network drive, I might get a kind of crazy list. And then to find the exact right one that I actually need to see today might be really difficult. So, as an example, I took a moment and searched for contract inside this folder of 2009 PDF resolutions. This file is organized by the clerk of the board for the Board of Supervisors, and it's really, really well done. There are only a couple of things that I would change, but it really does get the job done. You can see that when I searched for contracts, it eliminated everything that didn't have contract in the file name. And then if I were to search for something like DSS, it would pull up all the ones that were related specifically to DSS as well. The only problem is that when we use these abbreviations, if I search for social services, I won't get any responses, or I might get some, but not all of them, because some of them might be named DSS and not social services. But in any case, it's easy to see how if you search for contract and everything is named without any kind of additional details or dates, it would be really hard to find the one that you needed. As a matter of fact, in this particular search, it returned dozens of results. So if they didn't have this much detail, it would take me a very long time to find the specific one that I actually needed today. I hope I've managed to convince you how important good file naming is. And therefore, let me get into showing you how we can do it as a standardized process. When you standardize things in any kind of IT or records management space, and in any kind of office setting, really, it certainly does help to make transitions smoother and to make the office behaviors more efficient. Basically, it just streamlines or improves everything just a little bit, which can make a big difference. For this particular set of recommendations, of which I have two, I want to see people starting their file names with the date, starting in this date format: year, month, and day. And the reason why I suggest this is because usually we don't worry about keeping things based on their month or day, but we do usually keep them based on their year. Now, the other reason why I suggest this date format is because it's the international standard format. So everybody is supposed to technically use this for official things, like court filings or other kinds of documentation. Next, I want to see the subject matter. The subject could be the vendor or the department or the contractor or the larger project. The next part we want to see is the business process. So, say I had a capital improvement and they're working on a specific bridge. I would maybe date it 2024 0614 Jones Bridge Road paving project or something. You can see at the bottom we have an example that relates to the earlier process. I'm showing here the full date in that standard ISO format, plus the name of the subject, which happens to be a vendor, plus the business process, which is a contract. When I first rolled out that previous methodology, I really felt like it was the best only way. But then somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, in my office, I really need things organized by the subject and not by the date first." And I got to thinking about it, and as it happens, I think it works out great so long as you standardize the way you spell the subject. So, in this example, if there was hundreds of invoices, maybe dozens a month in a specific office, it might benefit them a lot to have all of the staple goods ones together. I can think of a number of reasons for that, and I'm really grateful for my colleague reaching out and letting me know that this is an issue. So, in this case, staple goods invoices would all be together, and then they would also be all in order by this date, um, the date section, rather. So, that could be really, really useful, especially if you're dealing with stuff that changes the disposition date by quite a lot, like, say, an invoice is part of a capital improvement project. That could really shift how long you want to keep something. Here's some general tips that will help you to make better file names time after time. The first thing is you want to keep a file name relatively short and include in this 140 characters the file path. So that means like the entire file structure, like Department of Health slash public health slash fiscal slash invoices slash staple goods underscore 2024 0101 invoices dot pdf. All of that needs to be under 140 characters. The next thing you want to do, which will really help you to keep those characters down, is to remove any conjunctions. So if there's something like ways and means, you want to call it ways means. The next thing is separate the terms with underscores or dashes and hyphens. That doesn't make a lot of sense to those of us who are thinking in like an analog way, like when things are written down, but it makes a lot of sense to computers. That helps them to understand that each term is a token or a specific kind of metadata. Avoid using abbreviations. These can be really problematic down the road because the title or name of something can change many, many times. As an example, when I first started, there were lots of abbreviations saying SNF, and I didn't know that the CNR had a different name at that time. So it took me a long time to figure out what an SNF was. Be careful to check your spelling too. You want to make sure that you have the same uh, way of spelling something over and over again. And you want to also make sure that you don't make things plural or you always make them plural, but not both. So for staple goods, the name of the company is Staple Goods. So we're going to call it Staple Goods and not Staple Good. And that way they will always show up together when I search for staple goods. Always remember when you're making a file name that the goal isn't so much to get a slam dunk awesome file name. The goal is to make sure that when you go back in a year, you'll understand what that file is. And after you retire or move on to a new position somewhere else, the person that follows up after you will understand what that file is too. This has been Now You Know with Livingston County Records Management. Please subscribe to Livingston County, New York's official YouTube page and pop back in every once in a while to see more records management content from yours truly, Megan Sokolow at Livingston County Records Management.